Good morning, everyone. My name is Nguyễn King, and today I would like to present Chapter 2, Thinking Like an Economist. When people hear the word economist, they often think about the money, banks, or the stock market. However, economists actually study much more than that. They try to understand how people make decisions, how businesses produce goods and services, and how governments respond to economic challenges. This decision involve limited resources and unlimited ones. Because resources are scarce, people cannot have everything they want. Therefore, economists study how society allocates these scarce resources in the most efficient way. In this chapter, we will explore how economists think, the scientific methods they use, and economic models that have expanded the real world. Now, let's begin by understanding what economists actually do. Economists study the economy in a way that's very similar to scientists. Instead of making decisions based on personal opinions, they follow a logical process that begins with observations. First, economists carefully observe what is happening in the real world. They collect information about prices, wage, unemployment, inflation, consumer behavior, and many other economic activities. For example, imagine that the price of a coffee suddenly increased. Economists will ask a question such as, what, why did the price increase? Will consumer buy less coffee? Will coffee farmer produce more? The observation becomes the starting point of economic research. After gathering enough information, economists build theories. A theory is simply an explanation of why something happens. This theory also allows economists to predict what might happen in the future. However, economists do not stop there. They compare their theories with real-world data. If the evidence supports the theory, it becomes more reliable. If not, they revise the theory and continue researching. Finally, economists use these findings to explain economic issues and provide useful recommendations. Their research helps businesses to make better decisions, um, helps government design economic policies, and even have individuals understand how economic trends affect their daily life. Because economics is rely on evidence instead of opinions, economic is considered social science. Although economists use scientific methods, studying the economy is much more difficult than studying subjects such as physics or chemistry. The reason is that the economy involves millions of people making different decisions every day. People's behavior changes over time, and many factors influence economic outcomes. To make complicated problems easier to understand, economists use assumptions. Narcissism does not mean something is always true. Instead, it simulates reality so that economists can focus on the most important factors. For example, when studying international trade, economists may assume there are only two countries and two products. Of course, this is not realistic, but it makes the model much easier to understand. Based on this assumption, economists create economic models. An economic model is a simplified version of reality. Like a map, it does not include every detail, but it helps us understand the overall picture. In this chapter, there are two important economic models. The first, the first is the circular flow diagram, which explains how households and firms interact. The second is Robertson's possibility frontier, or we can call it PPF, which illustrates scarcity, opportunity cost, trade-off, and efficiency. Both models simplify complex economic activities and make them much easier to analyze. So now let's move on the first economic model, the circular flow diagram. This model helps us understand how different participants in the economy interact with one another. Although a real economy is very complicated, the circular flow diagram signifies in two main groups, households and firms, connected to different markets. Let's begin with households. Households on the factors of production, including labor, land, capital, and um, they provide these resources to firms through the factor market. In return, firms pay household wage, rent, interest, and profits. This becomes household income. Thus, households use this income to purchase goods and services from firms in the goods market. At the same time, firms use the money they receive from selling products to continue producing goods and services and pay for the factor of production. The circular flow diagram also illustrates two important types of flow. The first is the real flow, which include labor, resources, goods, and services moving between households and firms. The second is the money flow, which including wage, income, spending, and revenue moving in the opposite directions. These two flows happen continuously and are connected to each other. Without household, firm could not have workers or customers. Without firms, household could not have income or products to buy. Therefore, the circular flow diagram provides a simple but effective way to understand how resources and money circulate through the economy. The second important model is the production possibility frontier, commonly called PPF. Unlike the circular flow diagram, which explains interaction between household and firm, the PPF focuses on productions. It shows the maximum combination of two goods that an economy can produce using its available resources and current technology. This model introduces four important economic concepts. The first concept is scarcity. Even a country has limited resources such as labor, land, capital, and technology. Because these resources are limited, it is impossible to produce unlimited amounts of every product. The second concept is trade-off. Since the resources are scarce, producing more of one good means producing less of another one. And the third concept is opportunity cost. Every decision has a cost because choosing one person means giving up the next best alternative. And finally, the PPF illustrates efficiency. Uh, a point located on a curve represents efficient production because all resources are fully utilized, and a point inside the curve represents the inefficient production because some resources are employed or underused. A point outside the curve is currently uh, understandable because the economy does not have enough resources or technology to reach the level of the productions. And overall, the PPF reminds us that scarcity forces every society to make choice and every choice involves an opportunity. Now we have learned two important economic models. Let's look at two main branches of economics. The first branch is microeconomics. Macro, Macroeconomics focus on individual decision makers such as consumer, workers, household, firms, and specific markets. It studies questions like why consumer buys certain products, how business sets price, or how supply and demand determine market outcome. The second branch is macroeconomics. Instead of looking at the individual markets, Macroeconomists study the economy as a whole. It focuses on national income (GDP), inflation, unemployment, and long-term economic growth. Although these children focus on different levels of an- analysis, they are closely connected. Decisions made by individuals and business influence the overall economy, while change in the overall economy also affect individuals and firms. Therefore, both macroeconomics and macroeconomics is essential for understanding how an economy works. Another important concept in economics is the difference between positive statement and normative statement. A positive statement describes facts or relationships that can be tested with evidence. It explains what is happening or what's likely to happen. On the other hand, a normative statement expresses opinions, values, or recommendations. It depends what people believe should happen. Understanding the difference between these two types of statements is very important because economists should separate objective analysis from personal values when discussing economic issues. Although economists often study the same economic problems, they do not always reach the same conclusion. There are several reasons for these disagreements. First, economists may use different assumptions when building their models. Second, they may interpret the same evidence in different ways. Finally, economists have different values or policy priorities. Some may find greater importance on economic growth, while others may focus more on reducing inequality or protecting the environment. These disagreements are not a weakness of economics. Instead, they encourage discussions, involve research, and help governments consider different solutions before making important decisions. To conclude, this chapter has introduced us to the way economists think and analyze the world around us. We have learned that economists use scientific methods, make assumptions to simplify reality, and rely economic models to explain complex economic activities. We also learn two important models, the circular flow diagram and the Waterson's possibility frontier. In addition, we explore the difference between macroeconomics and macroeconomics as well as the distinction between positive and negative statements. Most importantly, this chapter reminds us that economics is not only about the money, it's, make, it's about making choice, understanding security, and finding the best way to use limited resources to satisfy unlimited human wants. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this presentation has helped you better understand how economists think and why economics is important in our daily life.